Welcome back to DAGryffyn Hobby. My name's Dave. Today we're going to take a closer look at the Lionel 746. This particular model belongs to a coworker of mine. He has had it since he was a kid. Recently brought it in for me to look at it and tell him what I thought of it. Being that it's a 746, I said, if you like, I'll take it home, I'll check it out, I'll clean it up, and get it back to you. My goal, at least for this video, is just to disassemble, clean, and reassemble the engine, hopefully making it run better. I'm not going to replace any parts at this time. I probably will give them a list of parts and or repairs it might need in addition to any servicing, and we'll go from there.
I know for a fact that this thing was heavily used and abused during its lifetime. The front is kind of bashed down. The cab roof is a little bent. I'm told that I would run it at high speeds and it would derail at the turns and go flying onto the floor. I have faith that I can at least get it running. I'm not going to worry about the cosmetic stuff other than cleaning it up. I've never held one of these engines before, let alone taken it apart, so this will be a learning experience. It doesn't have any screws through the top. I'm just gonna flip it over and do what I know, and that's take some screws out and see what happens. I need a bigger screwdriver. All right, those two screws came out no problem. I don't need to, but I'm gonna take the rear truck off, and I'm going to take the front truck off. Well, that's bent. I assume that this is the screw. I don't think there's much else here holding everything together. All right, let's see if it comes apart. I think it will. Fantastic. Well, that's nice and easy. And this looks like, what, a 736 Berkshire? So really very easy to service. I'd love to shine this up and make it look great, but I also don't want to mess up the stripes on the side. They're not perfect, but I certainly don't want to make them any worse. Maybe a damp toothbrush and I'll just kind of scrub it a little bit. The motor seems to move freely, and I think the E-unit worked fine. It's a little loose, so when those are loose, sometimes they don't work as well. If you can see, this part of the arm has been bent to make better connection, so it was probably loose and they bent it in to work better. Is this a repair or is that just stuff? I don't know. I've never had one of these smoke units, so I don't know how they're different. The first thing I want to do is get the motor off, clean this all out, and then go from there. Okay, the two screws hold the motor in. They came out real easy, and now that the motor's out, it rolls both directions just fine. And it could be a binding in the drive gear somewhere, especially since this thing has gone airborne a bunch of times. This is about as disassembled as I am willing to go. I don't really want to pull wheels, and they all seem okay. There's no reason to replace axles or bushings. I'm going to clean it up as it is. There are a couple issues off the bat. The piston, or whatever you want to call it, was stuck in the smoke unit, so that wasn't going to be going up and down. The lever, well, I guess whatever you refer to this little block as that pushes the lever up and down, didn't really want to move. It's all very sticky in there. All the running gear is dirty. Well, really everything is dirty. And I've got this right where I want it, except for the motor. I think the whole armature should pull out. I feel like I've done it before. I took off the washer, the bearing, the other washer, and the clip. It should pull through, but it's not. So I don't really want to force it. I sprayed a little WD on there. I'll let it sit for a while, and I'll try that again later. Worst case, I'll clean it up, get some lubricant in there, clean up the face and everything that I can, and then put it back together. So I guess my first step at this point is to see how much of this junk I can pull out of here so that I can get it working a little bit better and lubricated properly. And some of this has to be original. I mean, I think somebody was in here once or twice, who knows, and serviced the thing, but some of this is just completely solidified and stuck. Look at that. That is no longer lubricant. So I'm gonna go through here, like I said, I'm gonna try to clean up as best I can, lubricate the axles and the gear, and see what happens. I mean, there's really not much down here. There's this gear that mates with the motor, and that's what drives it. None of the rest of the wheels are driven other than by the side rod. What we have up here is just an eccentric on the axle that pushes that block up and down to activate the smoke unit. So this is mostly my concern, but of course I want to clean that out too. So clean it all out and lubricate it and go from there.
I've scraped a good amount of junk out of this engine so far, but I really need to be able to spray something in there to loosen it all up. I'm sure there are 100 different things you could do. Soak it, wash it, scrub it, ultrasonic cleaner it. I don't know. What I'm going to go with is some contact cleaner. It's a sensitive cleaner that won't damage electrical stuff, and it dries quickly and it doesn't leave a residue. And I think it's enough to break up what's in there and to get it cleaned out. I've never used the WD-40 variety of this before, so I'm giving that a shot. Now, as I've been cleaning this up, I have noticed a problem with it that could impact running. I don't know if it's the bushings or if the wheels need to be pressed together, but it will shift to one side and then bind up a little bit. And it doesn't really bind like this at the moment. I mean, I've got everything off of it, you know, the side rods and everything. But when everything is attached, if it slides over to the one side, it does bind. I am concerned that that might be an issue going forward. But I'm gonna continue on and clean it all up and put it back together, and I hope it works. I don't wanna have to pull the wheels. I mean, it looks like that rear axle's bent a little bit anyway. I mean, I can always take it apart again at some point and do the axles. Everything has been gone through and cleaned. Some of this stuff could use, you know, polishing and buffing. It's kind of beyond the scope of this project. The main goal is just to get it working again. I've got the motor pretty cleaned up. It's looking good. Never could get the whole shaft to come out. Instead of forcing it, I shot some of the electric contact cleaner down into the hole, and it just kind of blew junk out both ends. So that was good. I let it dry, and then I stuck a whole bunch of Labelle 102 in there. Goes down into the hole. Lubricated this side, pushed it in, and I lubricated that side, and it's feeling pretty good. So now I have to put the clip back on this end. So the washer, the bearing needs to go back in. The second washer, and then the clip. I'm pretty happy with that. Even though the unit was working pretty decently, I still cleaned it up. I sprayed it with contact cleaner and then rubbed it with a Q-tip. When you clean these, pay special attention to the areas where the copper is, because that's where the contact is. I'm going to put some Labelle down on the axles. Yeah, flip it over, you can kind of get to the front and the rear axle. I'll put some Labelle down there, and then on either side of the gear. I'm going to put the Labelle 106 down by the gear. Put the front of the frame back on. This might be easier to get back into place with that front removed, or at least loose. The lever back in there. Tighten the front back up. Need to line the wheels back up and put the main rod on the side. One of them has a bigger hole, lines up there so that this piece can attach. There's a smooth side and a side with like a little design on. The design faces out. This slides on here, and it goes into the hole there. This goes through the hole in that arm, and then this spacer goes on with the big side up right in there. Just put the screw in, but before you tighten it, it has to be lined up. And if it doesn't make sense one direction, it will go 180 degrees the other direction. And this one's wrong. As you see, it's pushing it forward and it's hitting. So you have to loosen that. Turn it 180, snug it back up, and check it again. Okay, and that's rolling pretty nice. So I'm going to go and tighten all this down, make sure everything's secure, and we'll go from there. It's all tightened back down. It rolls fine, but when this axle shifts, it does start to bind a little bit. The flange from the rear wheel is pressing on the inside of the edge of this wheel. I don't know if that's going to be a problem with it running, so I'm going to continue on, put it back together, and see how it goes. And you can see how much wear is on the rollers here. The really thin line in the roller would be from that center rail, that thin center rail on Super O track. This is all cleaned up now and should move freely. Have to resolder the wires for the light, smoke unit, and the center rail pickup. Now the bulb is a very strange two-prong bulb that I haven't seen before. I did test it and it does work. Hopefully it works with the vibration. It seems a little loose, but I'm not going to alter it. If this was my engine, I'd probably swap it out for an LED. While I'm waiting for the soldering iron to warm up, I'm going to put the motor back in. Put Labelle 106 on the gear. There should be a little lock washer on these. Sometimes it stays in the motor casting. Make sure the motor goes down evenly and flat with the gear engaged. I'm going to put the brushes in there, always making sure they move freely. And then we just have to reconnect the wire from the coil and the wire from the E-unit. Yeah, the iron might have gotten a little too hot. Okay, wires are good. Just realized there's no metal cover here. I'm assuming that came out years ago and just never went back in. So as that's going, it's going to fling the lubricant from the gear all over the inside of the locomotive. Only 3 screws left, and that's what holds the shell to the frame. So before I put that back on, fingers crossed, I'm going to see if this works.
All right, let's see. All right, light works, smoke unit works, E-unit works, motor works. I am having some obvious sluggishness going forward. I'm gonna put it back together and run it a bit and see how it goes. But I think something does need to be done about the rear axles. I do have to say, in reverse, it runs wonderfully. It's never easy. It occurs to me I have not tried the whistle, but I'd be very surprised if it worked. Oh, there we go. That actually works really well. Once I clean up the wheels, I think it should be good. Well, that's a nice surprise.
So it runs fantastically in reverse. So there's nothing wrong with the E-unit and the motor. What's happening with this rear axle is, you look at it now where the motor gear hits the gear on the axle, you can see that the axle gear is all the way over to the right. It should be centered like that. And when you're going backwards, that's where it is. But when you go into forward, the rotational movement pushes the axle that way, and then the gears bind. So either that needs to be kept that way by either pushing the left wheel closer in, or by getting some sort of spacer down in there around the axle. And then the other option would be to pull the rear wheels off completely and do whatever repair is necessary. The axle does look a little recessed in there, so I might be able to remove the side rod again and then try to tap the wheel down a little bit and make it fit so that it doesn't move side to side as much. I'll have to look into that and decide on a course of action, because as it is right now, you really can't move it forward, and that's just not going to do it for me. So I'll have to ask the people that know better than myself and come up with a plan. Okay, well, it definitely needed the service and cleaning, and it was neat working on this engine since I've never actually run one before. I wish it would run forwards, just not doing that. Now, the proper way, from what I understand, to repair this engine is to remove the rear two axles and replace the bushings and maybe the axles. I think the rear axle's bent anyway. That's the proper way to do it. That's going to take me more time, more expense, and I don't have the proper tools to do it. So for the time being, I think what I'm going to do, which I'll show you next time, is shim out that rear axle and try to get it to run as well as I can without having to do any further extensive repairs or rebuilds. Now, in my opinion, the proper repair is the one that gets the train back on the track and able to be used. Of course, there's a right way and a less right way to do things, but I don't think it's the wrong way to shim out the axle. If it gets it working and gets you enjoying something, then that's okay by me.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on DAGryffyn Hobby.